Listo. Gracias.
Thank you.
Como David Caballero ya lo ha dicho.
David Caballero has said everything, so there's little left for me to say. Firstly, thank you for choosing the Valencia community as the venue of this Wuiwatch workshop focusing on firefighting operations and giving me the chance to share with you my personal experience and pass on some other experience from other colleagues. And without further ado, I will start my conference. We are facing a very serious problem. As we will see, some things will be redundant regarding David's intervention, but this is a growing problem because we are facing a socio-economic and social problem and change. This is affecting the Mediterranean areas, and for Northern Europeans who would only see wildfires in newspapers, we are witnessing a climate change which is knocking on their doors around the corner, and now they will face similar problems. The building structure is different to ours here in the Mediterranean regarding the building type and proximity to inflammable areas or fuels. If we speak about wooden houses, we see an important change since the 60s. I was preparing a paper recently and we saw the growth of the Valencia community regarding forest area. We have 3,300 more hectares every year in general terms. Most of these forest areas were gained in Valencia and Castellón. Alicante has lost around 20,000 hectares since 1968, and thanks to the special plan and everything done in 1994 regarding firefighting, has become wooded areas. And now we are seeing a different fire regime. We are testing our fire extinguishing limit with regards of climate change and what this might hold for us in the future with the low rainfall in spring and the early start of heat waves, which started in January last year, and a longer duration and higher intensity. So there's a further ingredient, the population risk. David mentioned before that interface fires are neither forest nor urban. They are actually. They are both. As we will see later, the urban emergency takes all our focus, and I will try to give you some clues regarding how we are dealing with the problem of operations, not just in the Valencian region or in other Spanish areas, but in other areas in the world. And I will explain how we are dealing with this, how firefighters understand this, and how we should understand it. Urban planning. How many urban planners do we have in Spain? We have 17 countries, that is to say 17 autonomous regions with several municipalities, with their own mayor, with their own architect, design their territory at a interface level or urban development level every 4 years, depending on their needs. And some people get their votes from some residential developments. And then we have all the residential developments which are illegal in many cases. And then there is a lack of urban planning regarding prevention, which is a heritage from the past. The protectionism of forest areas so that they are not reclassified into urban areas, but we cannot forget about the Mediterranean forest producing biomass. this is either eaten by goats, for example, or eaten by the fire. So we see here a study of the EU, where we can see the growth of the forest area in Europe. Let's see if we can play the video. Now you can see it moving. If you look on the Mediterranean strip, France, Spain, Italy, you will see a clearer shade of green, which is the shrubland. Now you see how it is changing. This is available on the internet, and we are constantly speaking about residential developments. Once and again, we have a problem with these developments. We have an interface problem with all populated areas. It is a town problem. We're speaking about whole towns. It's not just Benitachay or San Blas or Santa Marina. We are speaking about Estevella, Nájera, Serra, and a myriad of towns who have an interface problem. This is not just urban sprawl from the last few decades. It's a problem of socio-economic change, whereby we are losing certain warranties we had in the past to avoid fires, and this is an inherent problem at European level for the Mediterranean area. You know, I use this quote very often when we speak, when we say that if we don't use procedures will depend to some extent on how we apply them. But if we don't have a procedure, it will be difficult that we can solve a related problem. And this is the main problem we face. Same happens with the interface. We're still not quite sure how we should deal with this, because we are facing a fire problem in the Mediterranean. If we speak about the Atlantic, we could speak about quantity, but here we have a collapse due to the Spitfire, which is compounded by simultaneous fires. But these fires are very dynamic. They are simultaneous in space and time. They are ever changing. If we analyze them by the minute, by the second, by the 5 minutes, by the hour, they are constantly changing. And then if we have a plan to deal with them, the chips might fall where they fall, but it might be not the best solution. Regarding interface fires in the Valencia region, we could date back to the 90s, the Mongo area. We could continue with the La Cañada fire, with 30 burnt down hectares, with 50,000 residential houses, chalets, which are usually in the perimeter area, perimeter strip. And this intervention usually is a good solution. And then we have the Oropesa 2009 fire. Sorry, it's actually 2000. This picture is taken 40 minutes after the start of the fire and is taken by the helicopter. What can we do there once we arrive there? You would teletransport the trucks and the aircrafts. We have no capability against this. We can minimize the damage and to try and see where this is going to. Then we have the Granadella 2000 fire. Okay. This is the center. the fire. We had a new fire in this area. I don't know if we are becoming old or that the fires are recurring. It's the second time around we see this fire. This is Granadella in Alicante. And our local colleagues had to step back because the fire was moving through fuel models based on a fire from 16 years ago. And this is the scenario they are working. In 16 years, we will see how these headlines repeat. It is a huge disaster, everything is burned down to ashes. It is the end of the humankind. But we should know that in 16 years' time, anyone living there will see the fire again, and will have seen the fire twice. And this is the Calderona area. When there is politics come into play, there is always a problem because chaos arises. And I don't care what's the political party in power. When there is political tension, it results into 7,000 evacuated people. And don't forget, who is here to blame? Firemen and firefighters. Because we arrived late. Because we didn't solve their problem. They have no blame, no responsibility. On the environment they are managing and for which they are paid for. Of course, we need to improve things, but of course, it is not our fault. And then there are other fires, which is a good example of when the first unit arrives. We have a Villamarchante fire with two sources, and this is arson fires. And what can we do there when we arrive? Either this is prepared to prevent the spread, or we can't do anything. Firefighters can't do much. Yes, we will try to solve things when this is not burning, but when it is burning, there is little things we can do. And this is totally blank. I love open office. This is a 2012 fires. We see the 7 big fires in 2012. And then we carry out a survey on the number of houses inside and outside, with a buffer zone around these built-up areas. And in these 7 fires, there were 2,600 households, and in the buffer area we had 5,200 houses. So as fires grow, risk increases exponentially. We can respond with 1 truck, then with 3, then with 5 trucks, 4 aircrafts, and then we could have even the emergency military unit. But it reaches a point where we cannot deal with this. We cannot respond to immediate population risk, as I like to call it. And this is the growth. And then there are traffic cuts affecting the population, and therefore forest fire, when we speak about interface fires, this is actually a forest fire creating a urban problem. You will have burnt down cars, houses, LPG deposits, and so on and so forth, and you will have interior fires. So you will have plenty of emergency whose origin is the forest fire. And then it requires for prevention measures, as explained by David, macroscale, microscale, mesoscale. And then at macro scale you will have forest fires. But then if we go back to what is the interface, it seems that recently something is rising. In all definitions I've read, we don't see, in neither of them do we see the word risk. This is Fire Smart 2012, and we speak about FAO, EU Interior Department, Pinnacle. We don't see the concept of risk. It just says that it's an area where vegetation is in touch with houses. It could be for forest kind, but we don't see the definition. It seems that there is a emergency civil protection basic planning guideline for wildfires, and here we speak about these areas where buildings are in touch with the forests. Fire here can not only reach houses and buildings, but also it can spread inside the built-up areas regardless of the origin cause. So it seems that we are inching forward, and we are speaking here about flood areas, earthquake areas, and this is a problem we have when doing the urban development, or when there is a lack of sensitivity, of awareness of the neighbors living in the area, especially if we are speaking about Central Europe, because we should not forget that we have huge towns and huge residential developments populated with British people, Germans, Norwegians, and so on and so forth. Therefore, many of these people have no sensitivity at all, no awareness at all regarding such fires. And which are the consequences? Short term, fire creates huge environmental disaster. And as we could see in Granadella, it happened again 16 times later, and the headlines repeated. And this is a Cádiz fire from last summer, and social perception is this: there is nothing we can do. And then we were attacking this fire with water, but we didn't learn the lesson, or society didn't learn the lesson. And then something that really concerns me is that our position as Valencia, as the Valencia region, and one of our main economical motors is that if we keep publishing these headlines, maybe the Brits appearing on these headlines do not fancy coming any longer to spend their summer holidays in Valencia. And then we go back to concepts. This is what we call a intermix. Intermix is an area with plots totally immersed in the forest, where we know that these are all plots, built-up plots, where fire obviously will spread across very easily. These are medium intensity fires, but the problem is that this is Villalonga, Valencia. This is a Babel tower with people coming from different countries. They do not speak Spanish. Many of them are building wooden houses. The access is very difficult. They only have one way to get to their house, and this is not exactly the best place for cars. There is no self-protection plan in place, as far as I know, and this is borderline with two provinces, Alicante and Valencia. So who is responsible for it? So these are further problems to the emergency management. It is just a matter of time that we have fire here. And this is totally subject to fires. This is Bendache again. Up to now, at Cañada fire, we could see that there were certain warranties in perimeter areas. Now we see here the plots, but then we have hedges. And then we have many further elements, and we will see how in this spread map how this spread area makes it that a structure that initially is protected from fire now is totally subject to fire. So we go back to square number 1. So along the same lines, we are trying to solve the problem at in interface strips, and we're doing so following a pattern mentioned by David. I started working with some universities years ago, and we started by developing self-protection plans, a term I don't like because these are incomplete. So we started managing the forest mass by following the Rottermer patterns, which are surface fires. First thing we thought about was modifying this structure. I don't like either what David has mentioned regarding fire prevention. The idea of creating a 25-meter perimeter area. Who has decided that? Under which fires? Under which winds? With which vegetation? In this country, we have specialists such as forest engineers who can analyze these problems ad hoc. We shouldn't follow a norm. The recommendations put forward here, as it was said to us in Madrid, this is not sufficient. The responsibility is of the urban planning department, and this cannot solve what are local problems. So it seems that this norm will disappear. But we have scientific evidence to make the calculations. So we've carried out a research with the emergency unit, and this is just an example. So we created a perimeter strip in an area where we have a school center. And what do we try to do here? As we could see that in the Mediterranean, in Valencia, with plenty of orange tree fields, and we produce plenty of therefore we produce plenty of biomass, these treatments were lost in 4 years' time, and we are talking about 20-25% of the surface. We try to keep these structures by keeping Rottermer models of 8 or 9, so we can try and reduce the penetration capacity, and we, instead of having a duration of 4 years, this has a duration of 6 years. And we're trying to collect this information now to see if this intervention was successful. We've been working with the all units and also municipalities and the environment local department, so that there is perimeter defense. But what happens with all these areas in the Arizona area, which are subject to secondary heat sources? This is the result. This is Macastre, back in Valencia. It seems to be an intermix, but then there's fire jumping the interior of the forest. And then we see Alicante, cypress trees, which were very flammable in January, and they were collecting firebrands from different areas. We would be speaking about 30 meters, or we could speak about jumping fire, creating firebrands to a range of 1,000 or 2,000 meters. Or if we speak about Coim in Malaga, there was a trend of building with certain elements, and this created chaos because there was firebrands all over the place. So it is not a problem of just perimeter areas or fire prevention. It's also a problem of urban planning. In every town, in every city, and we can look for solutions. Personally, I do not. For example, we could change the humidity of living fuels, but I do not believe in this modification because this is not feasible in the future. And I'm telling this to my colleagues in France, in Central Europe. If we have a problem in Alicante, where the administration had to carry water to town so they could drink, we cannot start irrigating all the bungalows, chalets in all residential developments. This is not feasible long term, and I insist. If we have cypress hills, or cypress trees rather, which are burning through firebranding, and we are tackling this with irrigation, and they keep burning, probably the problem is somewhere else. Of course, we need some protections, because we could affect the structure, we could affect the vegetation, or we could try and change the vegetation. And the problem with cypress trees is that they accumulate dead fuel, which is available within an hour time. And therefore we need some precautions so that we make sure that what is inside doesn't burn. So that perimeter area should be adapted. Built up structures should be adapted. And what's inside should not burn. Now we will speak about it. Regarding elements conditioning our operation, well, it goes from wooden houses, and then when this is happening, you go to a different house if there's no one inside, because this is going to burn down whatsoever. And then we have narrow roads, cul-de-sacs, and then we have problems with auto pumps, and then water hydrants, which sometimes have water and sometimes don't have water. And then residential developments. By legislation, these should have fire hydrants, and when we open them, they should have water. This is the water line, and in the last 4 years, a residential development. This is a polyethylene pipeline inside the vegetation. Of course, when fire goes through this ravine, they will have water. This is essential. Pipes shouldn't burn. We could have plenty of rock in the area. But well, there are other building solutions. You could have a irrigation channel. But this is essential that the pipe carrying water to the residential development shouldn't burn. And then we need lines, such as in Torrent. When we go to a residential development, maybe, I don't know, my own residential development, but of course I don't know all the streets in the residential developments of Valencia, Alicante. This is impossible. So we need some, of course, we need signaling and signposts so we can know our way around to get as fast as possible to the goal, into our destination. Obviously, local units will know, but we are talking about 1-3 trucks. But when the rest of trucks arrive, we need some signposting. And if they indicate the water hydrants, that would be the top. Of course, if there is a total lack of awareness at urban development area level, rather, and in each town. This is a Montepego, and this is Montepego. What do you think it could happen there? If there's fire, never mind whether it's arson fire, imagine just this casual fire, it's accidental fire. Well, then we could see the images from Godelleta, Benitache, and in many other areas. Elements conditioning our intervention. When I see this sign, when we see these posters, these placards in the US, I find it really funny. Is your home ready? Yes, it is ready to burn down. It is the administration which should solve our problem. As owners, we cannot do anything. And this means a deep lack of knowledge. And then there's a second problem, which is selfishness. It is very important to raise awareness, but also to work in the legal area, so that the Valencia province towns suffered a great deal of fires in some years ago, and some towns decided that, okay, we will do the cleaning for you, but you will be paying for it. This is what they told the neighbors, and therefore there was a decrease in the number of services in the last 8 to 9 years. So this is another problem we are facing. And this is the border, Valencia-Alicante border, and I'm sure it's great sightseeing, but this is very difficult to defend. But here the impact would be minimum, because this area is the breakers. And this wooden house gives a clue of where we should intervene and where we shouldn't intervene. Of course, if these are older crop fields colonized by forest, well, then impact would be total. What are our possibilities as firefighters to work there? Zero. I repeat, zero. Because this means exposing people to an unacceptable risk. And I'm sure there will be people who will try in order to defend this. This means risking our lives due to lack of planning. And the solution is to leave the fire impacting this area as long as there is no one living inside. Because this is a self-fulfilled prophecy. And this, adding a perimeter strip here would make sense. This is Benitache. He mentioned the problem with the hedges and the cypress trees. It's very difficult to modify the quantity of fine fuel because there is living fuel and dead fuel. And the area with the highest hydric stress regarding living and dead fuel is this area, the Altea area. The water stress, the hydric stress is really high. So these elements are distorting our operation. We are talking about a fire front, but spotting areas, spotting fires throughout the area. The main front is where we see the highest level of action, but we shouldn't neglect other areas. And then we have butane gas, and then we see vehicles burnt down, 3 cars. And as Salva put it, they all belong to the same family. So yet another emergency. Now we will play a video in the Benitache fire. This happened at night. If we have an aircraft discharging, and this is happening during the day, we are exposed to a hazard, an unnecessary hazard, and then we have a electrical problem, and with a short-lived additional risk. Here you could see maybe pictures, and this is yet another video. This was burning for 3 hours. And we had LPG deposits. They were inflammable elements. Setting off the valve. And then you should deposit pumping water. And then this has struck me as well, because this is a match. This is a mat rather, because this is thin dead fuel in the form of a mat. And all these black dots are firebrand spots. Likewise, in this sofa, you see the firebrands. They didn't create fire, but it will be very difficult to raise awareness at microscale level so that people could avoid these kind of sofas and people do not buy this inflammable mat. This is just an example. This could be next to a flammable object. And here lies the problem with the interface. There were many fires spreading through firebranding, but we had never seen what happened in Benitache with such a huge level, because there is firebrands everywhere, but they were never so active. Or these fuels were never so available as they were in this fire. So these images would condition our whole intervention. There are plastic elements inside the gardens. This is On Teniente. This is fire through fire branding. And instead of being elements, these become other urban emergencies originated by the forest fire. So interface fires are multi-emergencies. And this picture from David's intervention. This is from Luis Berbiela, and this is the field model where behind the house we have all the waste, and this is the area in touch with the forest, which ends up creating this fire. And I've seen some resemblance between the tail of the wolf and the three little pigs and interface fires. If we are prepared, if we're not prepared, this will burn down. And if we are prepared, this area will not burn down. And this is where our struggle is. The struggle is inside the residential development. At least we should be able to focus and determine the target. Our target shouldn't be general to tackle all fires, because in this case our efficiency is reduced. So along these lines, you are always told to protect first lives, then goods, then forest. So we all focus on population risk. But what does it mean? Because one is the risk I have, and one is the risk I will have. The immediate one and the potential one. What are we failing at? Every one of us, including me. We are mixing immediate population fire, this first house threatened by fire, where we're trying to send most resources. We're mixing this with what fire can do, and where it will end up if we don't cut the fire spread. And this is where we should act. The immediate population risk is short-lived. It could last for 10-15 minutes. If we are speaking about shrubland, it will be very short-lived. The real problem lies in the population risk potential, and we should improve this considerably, because we are all failing, all of us. And some of you may say, okay, you are failing, not me. Okay, I admit it. This is the Godelleta fire. There's lightning impacting this residential development. Alicante. First firefighting media. They are focused here, but the potential is this red area. And we're talking about residential areas where the fire could reach. Where is the potential? Here. Where is the opening potential? Here. Where are we focusing our firefighting resources? In the immediate population risk. And this one is taking ravings in his opening here and there, and is going around the back. So you are constantly reacting. Your behavior is reactive to fire. But you are not leading the way. You should lead the way. You should be the one defending this immediate population risk and focusing the rest of the firefighting resources, aerial and firefighting media and units in forest areas, so we can cut the spread of the fire. And both aspects are population risk. And but then we have the problem. Imagine the judge asking us why you stop defending a house. I'm not telling you to stop defending a house. You will defend a house, but with fewer resources and focusing in the rest of houses and residential developments that could be visited by fire. So we keep focusing on this point. And the fire keeps visiting other areas. So the immediate population risk is this, but the potential is all this area. I could show Madrid fires or fire from other areas, but we see the same pattern repeating everywhere. Population risk blocks our operations, calls for our full focus, and in the end, the fire behaves differently, and we just follow the fire. And here you can see the end of the fire, the perimeter. It ended up here. This was blocked by our response to immediate population risk. Very quickly. I don't know how much time I have. Yeah, you used all my time. Keep on doing, but we are lagging behind actually. Okay, I will be very quick. 3 concepts that we're trying to implement: confinement, distancing, evacuation. Here we see the table saying that evacuate when you have the time, confine when you don't have the time, and if you have many people, or you can do confinement within the same area, then distance people. Leave them in the interior and distance them. But what's the problem? The problem is that the first thing you are asked by the media is how many hectares are consumed by fire and how many people are being evacuated. Second question is the perception of fire risk. Fire risk perception by other media, by other units, local police, national police, and we should give it a think. This is Artaz. This is an auto picture after the fire. The natural way out is this small road connecting the Villar de Arzobispo road later on. This population here is a very little town, a village, which was evacuated so that we could continue working. Nothing happens if I get there in the last minute and fire is affecting the population. I confine them. This is a very defensible area. There could be some fire branding. My main concern, as we could see in Haifa 2 weeks ago, and as we have seen in the Saler area, which are open windows, 3rd, 4th, 5th story. But this can, as I said, this can be confined. What we can do is to take people out when the fire is approaching. Because where are we taking them? Inside a forest area? No. If we have firebrands or an aggressive fire, we will have firebrands at a certain distance. Because when the fire is aggressive, everything is available. And we could have firebrands from 20, 40, 60, or even 200 meters. So, evacuation, yes, if we have the time. Otherwise, we confine. Confining entails certain problems, such as evacuation, and this is Alturi. The Cortes fire spreading across 26 kilometers from head to tail. And which are the risk elements? We have a perimeter area. There we have secondary heat spread risk, and then we have small ravines. This ravine ended up in a fireworks center. And then there were several units defending the perimeter. Some of us wouldn't arrive in time. Some of us did arrive, and we could control this. But my real problem is here on the border. Do I need to evacuate the whole residential development? What do you think? No. Just push them inside the residential development, and in this way you are confining them, distancing them, and we don't need to go back to Sierra Calderona 2004. You know what it means? 7,000 evacuated people and the corresponding management. This is a huge problem. Or imagine here, this is Astalgar. Here we see the Chulilla fire 2012. This was happening during the night. We evacuated the town, and the fire was low. There was plenty of orange tree fields, so this area was clean, and the impact area was this one. This is a typical fire with winds going down, with a ravine behavior, approaching the urban area, and all the fires happening there will follow the same patterns. So if we have a perimeter area and we confine people, there will be no problem. So what do we do? What happened? There was pressure from the mayors, and this was a town with plenty of elderly people, and we were pushing out people who were disabled or maybe on a wheelchair. And hang on, you lead them out on a road, through a road, and you take them to a different town, and you have fire approaching you from the back. Is this the right approach? No. We need to get rid of this pressure of evacuation. Otherwise, we will be intervening incorrectly. So these buses that were being evacuated had to be escorted by the fire trucks. So this entails a great problem, because it could mean that you are taking people out of their homes to put them in the middle of the fire. So you need we need to work with towns and to create a self-protection plan, which would be very easy. So operations. There are plenty of places with fires which could worry us. Not of them are worrying, but we need a protection plan, and I like to congratulate to the special plan writers and drafters, because we have made meaningful strides. But we need to improve other areas. When you go to a hospital, they ask you if you have the right measures in place. If there are detectors, if there's a dry column, there's a wet column. Do you have fire extinguishers? Are they are signposting? This is what we lack in interface areas. And again, this could be a forest fire problem, but it is a urban fire problem. And this is an integral emergency. And this is the responsibility of civil protection, whether we like it or not. But we are working in this line. So before or later we will have casualties. In Gettysburg, if I am not mistaken, we had casualties. In Haifa, we have also an important problem due to terrorism, which is a growing problem in the last few years, and this is something that the military knows about. Building construction, catalogs, classifying the fire risk. This is something that Vid and I spoke about in Madrid years ago. We need to label this, to put a name on this, on each area. Otherwise, everything will be considered interface. There is a level classification done by the Marines from military operations in California, interface fires, and this could be a solution. And this is a classification of complications in fire interventions. And we should treat each interface area depending on the fire risk classification. There is no rule of thumb of saying, okay, 30 meters here, 30 meters there, and this is it. No, this is not the way forward. We have a problem. Actually, we have several problems. When we are in the interface, there are many places which are unreachable. Sometimes you are told to reach a house in a road with a number which is unknown to even the local police. This is very complex. So we always need the support of local police, and we need local knowledge, especially local police. We need support for each unit. And we should group in intervention groups. This is very well developed in our special protection plan, but we don't have as many team leaders as we would need. We would need sufficient leaders so they can coordinate 2 to 3 units as if they were a single unit. If we are talking, for example, a defense line with a progressive intervention, so we can tackle the fire spread against the interface, but always with the support of local police. So each one has their own communication channel integrated within the network. And this could be the channel of command for this interface area. So here you see this diagram, and my only addition is that this should be mandatory. It should be mandatory that local police or the Guardia Civil, the military police, should be accompanying us. Otherwise, we get lost. The 5, 6, 7 first unit will not get lost because they are the local ones. But the ones arriving later, we will get lost. Yes, we have Google Maps, but we don't have the local knowledge to get there as quickly as the first units. So we should always bear in mind that our intervention here is short-lived. It's very quick. We're talking about 5 minutes and go, 5 minutes and go. We are here. We should maybe burning, widenings, broadenings, and these, as I said, are short-lived operations, because then we move on to tackling the fire spread in other areas. And then always we need a prepared team for the second hit of fire, and this is a hypothetical fire in a residential development area where we have several teams led by a sector leader, And then we would need a second line of response and a team to solve problems arising when these other teams are moving around or when there is fire brands. This is just a patch. Name it as you wish, this is just a patch. And in my opinion, is the only solution to a problem which we have inherited due to the lack of sensitivity, lack of awareness. And we are losing one battle after the other due to this problem. And this requires for a better firefighting and better laws and better legislation. Thank you for your kind attention.